I force a woman to go where I want, and when I go there, I tell them, do you know what? I was hot, so I'm doing it now. Then I kill them. These were the chilling words of Moses Sitole, a South African Syrian rapist and a serial killer that was convicted in 1997 for the death of over 38 women and 40 counts of rape. Hello and welcome to another true crime podcast on my channel. My name is Melvis and you are watching Crime with Melvis. If you are new to my channel, just as a quick reminder, I upload solved, unsolved, and bizarre true crime stories on my channel. If that sounds like your kind of thing, then you have come to the right channel because that is all I do here. Why not go ahead and hit the subscription button as a free way to support my baby channel and to be notified each time I upload a new video. Your comment in the comment section and also a thumbs up will really help my young channel to grow as well. And before we dive into today's story, I will quickly apologize that I am not from that part of Africa, so my pronunciation is going to sound a little bit weird, but please just bear with me and don't come after me in the comment section. I perfectly understand, but I'll try as much as possible to make sure I try to give these pronunciations correctly. Without further ado, let's quickly dive into today's story. Today we shall be traveling to the beautiful country of South Africa to discuss the Halloween crimes of Moses Sitole, the serial killer that was quickly mostly referred to as the ABC murderer because of the locations that he actually committed his crime was in this kind of ABC. The names of these towns began with the letter A, B, and C. That was Atteridgeville, Boksburg, and Cleveland, a suburb in Johannesburg. Sitole was born in Vosloorus, a black residential area in the south of Boksburg, South Africa, on November 17, 1964. When he was a child, his father, Simon Sitole, died, and it was at this point that his mother, Sophie Sitole, later abandoned him and his 4 siblings in a police station. And before taking them to this police station, Mother Sophie made sure to warn all the kids that when they get to the police station, none of them should mention the fact that she was actually their mother. This must have been probably be the reason that she did not want the police officer to ask her to take her kids back, because there was really no need taking the kids to the orphanage when one of the parents was actually still alive. So because their father was dead, it was the responsibility of Mother Sophie to take care of her kids. But before she took them to this police station, according to her, she warned them not to tell the police officers that she was actually their mother. So when the kids went to this police station, behold, they did as their mother told, and she abandoned them there and fled, never to be heard of from again. It was at this point that Sitole and his other 4 siblings were transferred to the KwaZulu-Natal orphanage, where according to him, he fled 3 years later, claiming that they were being maltreated. It should be noted that when Sitole was about fleeing from the orphanage, his elder brother had probably become of age. He has just been referred to as Patrick. He has become of age and he was now living on his own. So when Sitole fled this orphanage, he went directly to his elder brother Patrick to live with him. And within this period of time, his life was a little bit stable and he began picking up menial jobs from gold mines around and other menial jobs around Johannesburg. And at one point, not long, his other brother will abandon him and travel to the city, leaving the house, like going to another city to stay, while Sitole will stay at his place. And they too eventually really have issues in life because Sitole will later sell his elder brother's house and move out of the residence. According to reports, Sitole really liked to help street children and especially runaways, returning them to their parents. This is very crucial in this case today. You should keep this at the back of mind because Sitole is going to use this kind gestures of him in his early life in order to create a fake company that he is going to lure his victims and eventually kill them. In February 1989, he raped Buiswa Swakamisa and threatened her with a panga, a South African machete. Months after, Swakamisa saw Sitole standing outside her new workplace and called the police. In a very unprofessional way, the officers forced Sitole and Swakamisa to share the backseat of a police car as they drove them to the police station. During the trip, Sitole kept cursing at Swakamisa and saying that he should have killed her. Sitole was sentenced to 6 years in prison. The issue with this Swakamisa story is the fact that Sitole kept denying throughout the trial that she never raped Swakamisa, that it was a consensual sex, and this was going to play a very big role in what Sitole ended up becoming. The fact that Sitole claimed his innocence throughout the trial and was eventually sentenced to 6 years made his grudges against women to be at its peak. The fact that his mother abandoned him and his siblings at a very tender age, and the fact that, according to him, Swakamisa had lied that she had raped her, took him to another level. Like, the hatred towards women became so apparent, and he was determined to make sure he inflicts pain on as many women as he could possibly be. So he was incarcerated in prison at Boesberg for 6 years, but he served only 2 of those 6 years because he was released on account of good conduct. Maybe he learned his lesson while in jail, and he was eventually released sometime in 1993 for good behavior. And it was at this point that he moved to Pretoria with Martha, that he had actually spotted while in prison. Martha had been visiting a family friend in prison. That is where Sitole saw Martha, and when as soon they began exchanging letters, and when he was released in 1993, they two immediately began a relationship that even ended up producing a baby. In July 1994, while Martha was 5 months pregnant with Sitole's daughter, Sitole lured 18-year-old Maria Munama to Cleveland. His bait, like in all the following murders, was a desk job in a foundation named Youth Against Human Abuse. Remember, I told you earlier that while Sitole was growing up, he will constantly take runaway kids and kids that are street kids and return them back to their parents. So when he began his killing spree, he used that to claim to actually create a company that was non-existent, so as to offer job to women. And when the women come for the job interview, he execute his plans. After raping and strangling Munama with his own hands, Sitole wrote 3 messages on her body. She a bitch. I'm not fighting with you, please. And we must stay here for as long as you don't understand. It is believed that these messages were directed to law enforcement, and that for each time he killed, Sitole imagined that he was taking his revenge on Swakimisa for reporting him. By the fall, like the next morning, 4 women had been found strangled in Cleveland, a 5th in Pretoria, and a 6th in Boksburg. One of them was Sitole's mistress, Amada. Mindful that at this time, Martha is pregnant with his daughter, and he is on the loose, strangling, raping, and torturing women. And to know that this guy was indeed a psychopath, he was actually in a relationship with Amada, and after killing Amada, he did attended her funeral. He was at Amada's funeral. This is to show how unremorseful this guy is. Like, it is like he really doesn't have a heart. He was a cold-blooded murderer. Months after the birth of the child, Sitole and Martha separated. Sitole became homeless and began sleeping in train stations. From then on, more and more women will be found strangled, raped, beaten beyond recognition. It is said that he had a particular pattern on how to deal with these women. After luring his victims, he will beat them up, rape them, torture them, and finally he will use their undies to actually strangle the women. So the killing had a particular pattern that made law enforcement to believe that it was being perpetrated by one man. Sitole targeted unemployed black women in their 20s who looked after their appearance. He offered them a desk job, and after a train trip, he would lead them on foot on one of his killing sites somewhere around Gauteng area, claiming that it was a shortcut to his office. Once there, he told them that he had been hurt by a woman and that he was going to rape and kill them unless they defeated him. He would then bind their hands, undress them, rape them, and more than once, and strangled them in the location. He strangled the first victim with his hands and the rest with something like any accessory from his victim. It could sometimes their undies, sometimes their belt, sometimes their strings from their purses or their handbags or whatever he could find. At one point, it is said that one of the victims was actually raped with a stick. So it was really, really some kind of torture. He really had to torture his victims before killing them. They had to go through horrible ordeals before they were actually being killed. And most often, they will really fight for their lives. They put up fights to struggle. But Sitole was a man, and he, in most cases, in all cases, he had his power. He actually always overpowered his victims. And when the victims were found, that is why during the court case it was clear that he was a sole perpetrator, because these killings had the particular pattern. They were raped, beaten, and their underwears or whatever accessories that could be found on them was what was used to strangle them to death, because the manner of death was ruled as strangulation to all of his victims. Out of frustration, the state had to employ the services of a South African profiler, Mickey Posterius, who was assigned to the case. She determined that the Cleveland murders were perpetrated by two different killers, one of whom was also the one responsible for more recent Pretoria and Boksburg's murder, because there was still fear about a false accusation against Silepe. Pistorius invited retired FBI profiler Robert Ressler to check the evidence and revise her profile. Ressler spent a week in South Africa and largely supported the conclusions of Pistorius, including her prediction that the killer would contact the media. Meanwhile, the hysteria about the murders had reached such level that President Mandela, made a public appearance on TV to ask viewers to cooperate and bring forward any information that could help catch this serial killer that is on the loose. It is so that like multiple bodies of women will be discovered in a single night. This guy really had a high sexual drive that is really, really on beyond comprehension. As a means to tip the police off and drew the attention away from him, on October 3rd, 1995, Sutole called the Gauteng newspaper The Star, saying that his name was Joseph Mangwena and that he was the man that is highly wanted. He then gave them a lengthy interview in which he claimed responsibility for almost all the murders but denied any part in which in the ones that were committed in Cleveland. He also insisted that he was not responsible for the death of the 2-year-old Sabuswa dead. This Sabuswa was a lady that was actually raped, and her she was killed. Yeah, and her 2-year-old son was killed alongside her because the young child had sustained a deep cut on her head. It's like this serial killer killed the child immediately after he had killed the mother. So the two corpses were identified immediately after the perpetrator of the heinous crime left the scene. But Sitole claimed he was not the one responsible for the 2-year-old son. According to him, there was a copycat outside, like someone had learnt of his crime and was actually doing his own crime, so everything could be dumped on him. But he will be proven wrong in court. He just wanted to throw the police off. To prove that he was really the killer, he finished the interview with some clues about the location of an undiscovered victim. Meanwhile, the police learned that all of the identified victims went missing after being offered a job by a man. They checked a phone number that many had called before their disappearance, which belonged to Sitole's sister. After realizing that Sitole's history matched the details given in the interview of Mangwena, it was announced that Sitole was wanted for the murders and his image was released to the public. When Sitole realized that his photographs and every information about him is out there and he has been declared wanted, he needed to seek refuge with family members. It was at this point that he called his brother-in-law and told him that he needed a gun to protect himself. They agreed to meet at the factory where the brother-in-law worked in Benoni, and the man immediately informed the police. The police planted an undercover officer, Francis Muvovizi, who posed as a new security guard. When Sitole arrived, he asked for his brother-in-law. The other security guards who were unaware of the operation told Muvezvizi to get him. Muvezvizi refused to leave his post because he didn't want to lose sight of Sitole. Suspiciously, Sitole fled and Muvezvizi chased him into an alleyway and attacked him. It was at this point that Sitole attacked the officer, and out of panic, the officer needed to protect himself as well. He shot Sitole on his leg and on the stomach, wounding him. He was rushed to the hospital to be treated for his injuries. By the time Sitole's trial began on October 21st, 1996, mounting evidence saw the total charges against him increased to 38 counts of murder, 40 counts of rape, and 6 counts of robbery. He pleaded not guilty to all the charges. Building a chronological picture of his crime, the prosecution introduced harrowing testimony from his earliest rape victims, detailing their ordeals at the hands of Sitole before his first conviction for rape. They followed a detailed examination of his connection with each of the murder victims, with testimony about the alleged job offers and the specific technique used to lure his victims to their death. Sitole appeared cool and collected throughout the trial. On December 3rd, 1996, the prosecution introduced a video that had been shot during Sitole's initial incarceration, in which Sitole candidly admitted to 29 murders. He described his techniques in some details, although he claimed that he began killing only in July 1995, selecting his victims for their resemblance to the rape victim Buyiswa Doris Swakimasi, whom he regarded as responsible for his first jail sentence. Sitole trials had to delay somehow because the video evidence that was presented in court claimed that the video was shot in a jail cell, so the judge had to say it was somehow illegal to record a prisoner in cell. He decided not to accept that as an evidence, so it actually somehow delayed the case to drag for some time. On July 29, 1997, the judge finally ruled that the evidence was admissible. The video evidence was admissible. The prosecution rested its case on August 15, 1997. The defense case was depended largely on Sitole's denial of any involvement in the killings. When he took the witness box, but his testimony was often rambling and incoherent. He would not speak straight, so it was somehow very clear that he was obviously not speaking the truth. It really baffles me how sometimes these attorneys, they really go to defend someone even when they know this person is guilty. It beats my imagination to see that the lawyers were really trying to defend this man and send him back to the society after confessing to all of these crimes he committed. This was really, really inhuman. On December 4th, 1997, more than a year after the case had commenced, Moses Sitole was found guilty on all charges. It took 3 hours to read the verdict, with the consequences that the sentencing had to be postponed until the next day. Next morning, the judge made a statement stating that in view of all the abhorrent nature of the crimes, he would have had no hesitation in pronouncing a death sentence on Sitole. However, since the death penalty in South Africa had been declared unconstitutional in 1995, Sitole was sentenced to 2,410 years in prison with no possibility of parole for at least 930 years. Clearly, the sentence meant to keep Sitole behind bars for the rest of his life. This to me was some kind of a death sentence, but I am happy that he's going to stay alive, incarcerated in prison, not to be out there. He's just going to suffer there and feel what he made his victims pass through. Sometimes this death penalty is just an easy way to let these criminals get away with their crime, but when you give them this life prison term without the possibility of parole, they have to spend the rest of their lives with that thought or having the nightmare that they sold their freedom on a platter of gold just to spend their remaining days in a space that is not even able to fit their bodies. Sitole Moses was incarcerated at the maximum security section of Pretoria Central Prison, the highest security cell box in South Africa, known as the C-Max. The saddest part about this story is the fact that most of the victims were never identified. Even though Sitole finally, he mentioned where he had kept most of the bodies, but this is 1995 and 1994, 1995. So forensic analysis was not as advanced as it is today. So most of the victims were really never identified during the trial. But Sitole confessed to their mothers and showed the law enforcement where he had actually hid their bodies. So some families have not even gotten, which is very evident that some families have not gotten closure to as what happened to their daughters. It is really a bizarre and a painful situation. The most important thing is the fact that Sitole will never see the light of the day, will never have the opportunity to hurt anyone. May they really find the courage to bear this loss, especially for the 2-year-old that his life was taken by this monster. That's gonna do it, guys, for today. That's why I had time to put up together for you guys today. Please do not forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Please stay safe. Do not show hate to anybody. Love one another and make sure you stay safe. Keep your eyes open. You might never know what is lurking in the dark. Until my next video, please stay safe.